Hello, I'm Linda Keane, Professor of Architecture at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. As an architect and co-founder of Studio 1032 Architecture and Environmental Design, I work on green initiatives along the Milwaukee-Chicago corridor. In addition, I am co-founder and creative director of the NEXUS.cc informal e-learning designopedia that introduces what design is, what it does, and why it is important to our sustainable futures. It is a pleasure to be able to participate in critical practice in an age of complexity via Skype today. Thank you very much. I will be introducing two different levels of citizen activism, one from a college course at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Eco Design Riverworks, and the findings that students researched and engaged to share with sixth grade public school girls. Thank you very much.
Water is essential for life. A healthy water source is necessary for a healthy living. Looking at contemporary issues critically has changed from singularly visual or scientific or environmental or economic to integrated seeing, looking, contemplating, learning, and responding across everything human. You may know very well these two designers, Ray and Charles Eames, looking at the world as we imagine it constructed with Einstein's theory of relativity, looking at everything large to quantum physics, looking at the world to everything small and nanoscale as the next economic revolution. Today we can, with a geologist point of view, look at Manhattan as Peter Stuyvesant saw it coming up the Hudson in the 1650s, and then as it evolved through the year in all of its biodiversity of original topography, soil, flora, fauna, insects, animals, roads, buildings, culture, technology, and the city of Manhattan as we know it today. Universal scale shows comparison and contrast between the measure of all things in our known universe. Today, critical practice stretches our imagination backwards and forwards in time, space, scale, and in-place relevancy in the impact on local atmospheric, biospheric, lithospheric, and hydrospheric realms. The water, energy, food nexus is an integrated look at the necessity of combining visioning, governance, learning, knowledge, and capacity, planning and implementing change. Advances in seeing and learning is challenged to address globalization and the mass movement of people into urban areas. Eco-Design Riverworks is an interactive transient sound mapping and community engagement series of classes that reimagines and visualizes the sustainable world above and beneath the surface of the Chicago River. Post-industrial cities like Chicago, challenged with engaging water habitats, water conservation, water quality, can be activated by college art and design students, making new connections of awareness with the public and with the Chicago River themselves as a healthy, working, and recreational ecology. Most people can't remember or even imagine that cities began by sources of fresh water. Chicago in the 1700s was a swampland with timber, wetlands, lakes, and rivers. And in 1900, engineers, in one of the masterful feats of the world, reversed the natural flow of the North and North Shore channel branches of the river that flowed into Lake Michigan, and with a series of locks, brought Lake Michigan water into the rivers and then reversed the flow down to the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal, Des Plaines River, the Mississippi, and the Gulf of Mexico. And why was this done? It was done because the city had polluted the drinking water so terribly that it was affecting the intake in Lake Michigan, bringing fresh water. Here you see Chicago today The flora and fauna has been stripped. It is an industrial city, and yet water is essential to life. How are we going to redesign and rearrange our cities to embrace the fact that clean air is first? Without oxygen, we die in a short period of time. But actually, secondly, water is integral to everything living. The world is set to face a 40% shortfall in water supplies by 2030 due to these pressures on urbanization, the increase in food production for the population growth, increasing demand from manufacturing, domestic, and energy sectors. Inspired by John Cage's 1978 Dip in the Lake series of acoustical experience throughout Chicago, this course is going to actually look at water, but then capture sounds of water, water use, and misuse in the city. Students start with figuring out where in the world water is located, labeling oceans, lakes, and rivers. And it's amazing so few, both college and in K-12, really understand that 90% of the water in the world is salty, and that out of the 3% that is drinkable, only a small portion in our rivers and underground aquifers are available. Students look at where they are living all of a sudden on the shores of Lake Michigan, and they look at the city of Chicago in ways to communicate to the public that they are part of a water system. Students are amazed to learn of the importance of the freshwater resource of the Great Lakes of the U.S., for the U.S., and for the world. They are also shocked to find that Chicagoans are draining the lake daily and then collecting all of the sewage in a 260 square mile area, shipping it south to the Water Reclamation District on the Sanitary Canal to treat it to improve its quality before sending it down to the Mississippi and the Gulf. With all of these engineering feats, they are beginning to think about the time it will take to filter water in the Great Lakes of the pollution. In fact, they think about water quality and aging infrastructure with lead pipes and water consumption when much of the world is looking to increased water shortages. Sadly, if people stop to look, our rivers are majorly polluted, and that means our city's water sources and groundwater are polluted. And they begin to look at the rivers in a different way, not as a casual way to empty garbage or actually as something where everything is just dumped, but as the actual capillaries of the earth, as the capillaries of our body. So we take them to the river. Some of them, believe it or not, have only crossed the river in buses. And here they are with new eyes and thoughts as they head to a place they usually spend little time around. They examine the surfaces and activities of people, machines, water, and buildings. They walk along the newly completed River Walk by Carol Ross Barney and Associates that starts with the marina where you can pull up kayaks and boats and stop for refreshment, to the amphitheater where music can occur or events can happen. We can have a floating theater. To the splash pad, always fun to cool off for any age. And then really the most ecological and environmentally progressive, the jetty, complete with fish hotels underwater and phytoremediation by riverine plants. They think again about expanding their senses to hear and map what is invisible below the surface of the water to what is auditorially and visible above, but needs to be encouraged in the general public. They use simple everyday equipment: photometers, spectrograph, digital temperature reading, soil density reading for compaction, headphones, hydrophones, and recorders. With the help of the Friends of the Chicago River, they test the water at Michigan Avenue, and not surprisingly, it's relatively clear and healthy as it's only 2 blocks from Lake Michigan, the freshwater resource. That's not the case around the rest of the South Branch. They use the Stroud's Institute Citizen Scientist Wiki Watershed to find out where the actual divisions of the watersheds are in their own city. They can select different sites in the city and right away see what the evapotranspiration, runoff, and infiltration of different amounts of rain, such as they got in Houston and other places in the South this past season. They then can actually go in to look at the water quality or analyze whether it's low density, medium, or high density, how many animals are living there, what's the biodiversity there, what is the soil condition for infiltration, and then they can actually re-add grasslands, urban forest, wetlands to begin to make the city more porous. The City of Chicago Green Roof website, created by School of the Art Institute of Chicago students a while back, actually has expanded to show many actions of keeping the rooftops of the city permeable, even though the ground plane is not. In addition, students map Chicago buildings by EnviroScore using the City of Chicago data, so we can begin to look at which buildings are using less energy. The students were sad not to be able to access which buildings are using low flush or energy on hot water on demand products, which means many of these buildings, if they involve domestic or apartment or condo living, have hot water heaters that 24 hours a day keep those showers waiting even when people are out of the country, out of the town, or just at work. They combine that with the Atlas of Urbanism to look at biodiversity of buildings, to see that in fact areas where complete historic districts have been torn down and new buildings built up, that is this biodiverse enough for our populations, for our mixed incomes, for the things a city needs to have in every neighborhood to coexist. They, of course, check the walk score and find that it's a very walkable district, and then decide that they want to focus on bringing the flora and the fauna, the life above and below the water, into the public imagination. So they begin as designed object students and art education students to produce a series of products that don't exist right now that might actually be really helpful in introducing people. And I'm sorry we don't have her microorganism, phytoplankton, and zooplankton plushies, which are quite engaging. They also then begin to look at the series of data that is so well collected in a new epic book, The Third Coast, a prelude, Atlas of the Third Coast, a prelude to a plan, which combines all of these mappings of key information in one place, that actually that phytoplankton and zooplankton population is declining because of first the invasive zebra mussel density, and then now you can see it's completely filled with the quagga mussel. The quagga mussel has killed off the zebra mussel because it can take a glass of lake water and purify it, clean all of its algae, eat all of its microorganisms, and leave nothing for any animals or fish. This led them to understand the water food connection, that the fishing industry is overfishing because of the growth of population, the also decrease in phytoplankton that scientists are not quite sure, that also they are beginning to believe that the phytoplankton and the algae blooms in the ocean create a large part of the oxygen in our atmosphere. So they're beginning to link these things to other things. So EcoDesign RiverWorks River Listening is actually inspired by the work of Dr. Leah Barkley, UNESCO Biosphere Reserve Listener, and Eric Leonardson, Midwest Acoustic Ecologist Association president. And that is making the public aware of the city as a sonic space. Listening is inevitably spatial. And so, what birds and animals can we hear in the city? What sounds of wind and water? What sounds of emotion, happy, sad, stressed, or excited? Are all of these sounds destroyed by the sounds of vehicles and machinery? So, of course, the students eagerly go out and record all the fountains because it includes water. In the summer, it includes people. We also studied the decibel range, and it's interesting that pouring water in either pumped waterfalls or in jets comes in at about 64 decibels. And not only is it refreshing and nourishing, it covers many of the city sounds. You can still hear the siren here, but these people, because of the sound of water, are enjoying themselves. They are gathering as community. It is for pleasure. And on the other side of the world, people are going to streams for necessity of life. And this issue now with the fountain map that you'll see in a minute will begin to show these fountain sites with all their history, with their pleasure, with their sonic sounds, but then also with facts about water deprivation and water shortage on the other side of the world. So the sound mapping of cities. We talked about the fountain map, so you can see this was part of a Taking the Waters exhibit as part of the Chicago Architectural Biennial this past fall. But you can see the spectrum view that we're looking at. You can hear and listen with the code readers at the exhibit. You could enter these sites on your phone. You could check out the EnviroScore, listen to the fountains. You could recognize this Great Lakes fountain and then see it run from the highest lake and the deepest lake down to the lowest lake and out to the Mississippi, or pardon me, out to the Atlantic. The Appareil Map is actually a worldwide map, and its aim is to record cities like the Stockholm Mission that have sound environments within the city that are conducive to relaxation and a reconnection to the place that people are at. This is the students under the leadership of Eric Leonardson making the Hydroponic Listener, and here we are with our one sound. See if you can hear the difference. That's our fish. And here they are, bluegills in the Chicago River. Now, even in this video, you can hear the sound of engines. Sound travels 4 times faster underwater than it does above water. You may have remembered the big die-off of whales on the coast. That is because of oil tankers moving their path and driving actually the whales to complete depression and not eating and dying because it was so loud. So the goals of this class are community engagement in a variety of projects with diverse organizations who are working on the water, and then creating a public presence to get more people to understand the importance of fresh water, the value of living by the Great Lakes, and the value of cleaning the river. So that said, those maps are all available on YouTube, Eco Design Riverworks, and let's go on and just end with how this can be communicated to a larger public. So global fresh water, shockingly maybe to some, is 70% used by agriculture. Only 8% by our domestic needs, though we can conserve on those, and then industrial. The trouble with these sources is this. Water issues. We take water from one state and move it 4 states over. What does that happen to the original state? It destroys its ecosystem. And destroying ecosystems, it then begins to destroy the life. Water importation changes local economy, reduces small farms while growing populations to eat up farmland. When we irrigate the desert to grow our plants, we then are increasing new deserts across the country. And finally, water issues, the politics of water. There is the industrial contamination. There is the use of manufacturing, the thousands of liters it takes to make a car, a pair of jeans, a t-shirt, something we spend $1 on, absolutely is not equitable to the price it's taking away from our environment. Wetlands, nature filters are being developed and their environmental protection is being lifted. Cities as we know it are hardscapes and not porous. Aquifers are being used faster than they can be replaced, and cities are sinking into the ground. We have heard many of these things, but it is time now to not just hear them, but to take action. And a lot of it started with shifting water as a commodity and, as Oxfam says, as a right of every living being on earth to actually something that can be bought and sold. And there are several large companies now that have been given access to buy water internationally who are beginning to control water and access to water. Energy. So finally we go into energy. We know we have aging infrastructure and the power grids and that they are leaking, that they are mixing toxic chemicals, they are emitting global carbon. The coal ash, the waste material, and we have beginning attempts to shift from non-renewable to renewable. There is so much work to be done that every designer, every environmentalist, every scientist needs to focus and concentrate. So after water, which is included in all of this, comes food. And the industrialized answer to growing more food needs to diversify with vertical farming, with biofuels, with hydroponics, aquaponics, and we know that we are growing more food than the world needs, but we cannot transport it while we are importing foods that we are no longer growing so that we can have a fancier diet. Cities are no longer self-sufficient. Food security is a threat. This is a great movie, Eat Real, Eat Local Canada, where we're seeing what used to be the local farm food at our table is now coming many, many kilometers to reach its point. And the movie also shows the great devastation on the biosystem, the land, and the increased urbanization. And so we're going to end now with NEXUS.cc, an e-learning program built by college students who are researching these events that connect 9 scales: nano, pattern, object, space, architecture, neighborhood, urban, regional, and global when we're thinking about something or making something. To give the tools, languages, discovery, and design opportunities that companies have, that college students have to the 99% of the other percent of the world, or the 2/3 of our population in the United States who does not go to college. It's just next.cc. You can click on it, choose any scale or combination, any topic or combination, and of course, we have a series of water, food, and energy journeys. So here it is, translated to a 2-hour workshop with 6th grade public school girls to introduce them to the complexities of today's critical practice.
In Chicago in 1911, 8th grade public school students were given a copy of the Wacker Manual, an urban primer for municipal economies. Like the Wacker Manual sharing of great designers of great cities, today's primer introduces sustainable systems as ways to connect the ecology of place with people. In 2016, students are given access to Next.cc's Designopedia to imagine cities of the future. Girls think about balancing a compass with nature, well-being, economy, and society. As global populations seek new opportunities in urban areas, girls think about making cities that work like nature, with living systems like the ones that work in their bodies. Girls are charged with providing clean water, local food, and renewable energy and creation of walkable, mixed-use, mixed-income, place-based neighborhoods. Girls form teams and select a site to begin building, beside rivers surrounded by wetlands, woodlands, and prairies. They place single-family farmhouses using NEXUS.cc's Green Home Journey. They create farm communities powered by alternative energy sources. Girls choose leadership roles and travel to meet with career mentors to prepare their cities. Mayors talk about responsibilities: listening, thinking, writing, speaking, collaborating, and leading. They learn about their envisioning and governing a city. Mayors choose buildings with iconic identities. Health and well-being leaders provide clean water, local food, and walkable neighborhoods. Civil engineers build main streets and connect walking paths, bikes, buses, cars, trucks, water taxis, and airplanes. They incorporate renewable energy sources to power their cities. Housing directors select different housing styles and types to establish and diversify neighborhoods. Commercial developers create commercial corridors where people can purchase the supplies, services, and systems they need to live, work, learn, and play. Girls place varied green spaces as public plazas, parks, playgrounds, recreation areas, and open lands. Education directors place learning environments for all ages with nature play areas throughout the city. Developers select and place business workspaces and innovation centers. Learning from mentors, girls work together. They collaborate, negotiate, and consider alternative ways of living, while thinking how they will contribute to make their city better. Girls design ecopolises.
Another thing that's special is it has lots of transportation, like the airport, the tunnel where the ships and boats go, and there is a train station. What is also unique about our city is that we have 2 rivers, we have many buildings. What's special about our town is number 1, that we all work together and we all built this town, and number 2 is our library and our education parts of the town, or the city.
So thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about a critical practice that connects college education to democratization of K-12, so that children, a quarter of our population, are introduced to these complexities and actually embrace working with them in a fun and free manner while they're learning about the complications and the issues that need to be solved. So thank you very much for this opportunity, for holding the conference, and I look forward to seeing everyone else's presentations.